All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. There's a wide gauge as to when Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders will hear his name called, more than likely in round one of the NFL draft on Thursday night. Now, of course, one of the biggest questions is, or one of the multiple big questions, will Shador be a top 10 pick come Thursday night, or is he going to have to play the waiting game? Now, some scouts have Sanders graded as a late first round pick, or some guys have him as an early second round pick, talent wise. But if there's ever been a position that a team will overreach for in the National Football League, you better believe that it's quarterback. And could Sanders possibly be another overreach by somebody? Now, Sanders has some accolades to his, on his resume as he enters the NFL. He's the reigning Unitas Award winner, okay? Top quarterback in the country. He's also the Big 12's Offensive Player of the Year. And in 4 years in college, Shedeur Sanders' record as a starting quarterback is 36 and 14. Okay, the first 2 years, of course, were at Jackson State in the SWAC before he transferred to Colorado when his dad, Dion, became the head coach there. So he was 13 and 11 as a starter at Colorado. Granted, the level of competition was much different, first in the Pac 12 and then in the Big 12 for Shedeur Sanders. He threw 64 touchdowns, he had 13 interceptions. And this is a guy who's going to finish, or did finish, his collegiate career with a completion percentage above 70. You think about some of the things that Shedeur had to deal with at Colorado. He did not have the benefit of the best offensive line or the best running game around him for either one of those 2 years, as Colorado's offense was very pass heavy. So, with that said, what are Shedeur Sanders' strengths as a quarterback? He's 6'1, about 215 pounds. In my opinion, he's a pocket passer to the core. Okay. You have to remove the last name from the equation, because when you think about Sanders, of course, you think about his dad, you think about the speed and the mobility that Deion Sanders had, as a Hall of Fame defensive back. And of course, he was a phenomenal kickoff and punt returner as well. Shador is not that. There is still athletic ability there, but he's not a mobile quarterback. Okay. He is a pocket passer. But no, make no mistake about it, this kid can throw the football. All right. Some of the weaknesses of Shador's game, sometimes to me, he focuses too much on one receiver, and at times that gets him in trouble. Also, he needs to read the field more. It depends on which side of the street that you're coming at for that one, because I say that he needs to read the field more. But at the same time, like I said before, he did not have the luxury of playing behind the best offensive line in college at Colorado. So when it's all said and done, what teams could be in play for Sanders? And like, this is going to be very interesting here, because I could see a scenario where Shador Sanders could be any place from the second pick on Thursday night to even possibly, 26, 27, or 28 in that category. It all comes down to me how the early stages of the draft play out. You've got the Browns at number 2. Would they take a quarterback? Maybe not there. I put the New York Giants in that category as well. They need a franchise quarterback, yes. I don't see them taking Shador Sanders at number 3 if you read the tea leaves. Okay, things would be different. Here's where it's going to get very interesting for a lot of people. All right. You've got the New Orleans Saints at pick number 9. And of course, we know about the shoulder injury to Derek Carr. And this season aside, because there's a possibility that Carr could miss some significant time, we're talking about an older quarterback okay, with a new head coach and Kellen Moore coming in. Not a good recipe if you're the Saints as far as going forward with him as your quarterback. Could New Orleans take Sanders there? Very strong possibility. Also, two teams I think people should look out for: the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Los Angeles Rams. You got Pittsburgh, who's picking at number 21. And of course, the two quarterbacks who saw significant time for them last season, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, are both no longer on a team. Russell Wilson is with the Giants, and Justin Fields is with the Jets. There was a lot of speculation, and there has been a lot of speculation as to whether or not that the Steelers would go out there and sign Aaron Rodgers. I have made my thoughts uh, very clear on the whole Aaron Rodgers situation. I think Pittsburgh should steer clear of that. Pittsburgh does pick number 21 on Thursday night. Could Shedeur be a possibility there for them? And then finally, there's the Los Angeles Rams, and the Rams are there at number 26. And I say, do not count out Sean McVay and the Rams as possibly being a place for Shedeur Sanders to land. There's a lot of questions that are going to be interesting to see what happens Thursday night. Will a team be willing to trade up to possibly get Shedeur Sanders? You can never say never, because if there is a run on a position, it doesn't matter what round of the draft that it is, but if there's a run on a position, guess what? There's going to be general managers, there's going to be coaches who say, hey, you know what? I don't want to get left out on the fun. We know it's basically a slam dunk at this point. The Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami, is going to be the first overall pick of the draft to the Tennessee Titans. Now, from there, the rankings at least of quarterbacks do dip. There's a possibility of Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss possibly being a first round pick at quarterback as well, along with Shedeur Sanders. I truly do think Shedeur Sanders will hear his name called on Thursday night. It's not a matter of if, it's more like when. And like I said, it's going to come down to which team wants him the most and which team feels that, you know what, he can make the impact for them once he gets into their building. Regardless, I don't see Shedeur Sanders being phased by playing under the spotlight or the big market. You think about it. As soon as he got to college, before Colorado, when he was at Jackson State with his dad, you know what? The spotlight was on him. And I think, we've seen this kid do commercials now, collegiately. Of course, a lot of kids are, cashing in on the NIL era of collegiate athletics. He wasn't phased by that. Colorado got a ton of attention for each game over the last 2 years. So I think good, bad, or indifferent, Shador will be ready to go for that. It's to me, I look at, one of those scenarios and you say, hey, what are the best scenarios and what are the best teams out there for him to get drafted by? Um, for me at this point, I would say, in not any exact order, I'm going to say the Steelers, I'm going to say the Rams, and I'm going to say the Giants. And I'm going to start with the Steelers because overall, the Steelers have themselves a good organization. Um, with that said, you would have two quality receivers to get the football to in DK Metcalf and George Pickens. The problem is you have to get the football to DK Metcalf and George Pickens. And of course, Mike Tomlin over the years, like him or not, he has shown that, his receivers can get out of control. And we saw that from George Pickens last year. I don't think that wide receiver room is going to get any better mentally now that DK Metcalf is there. I like the Rams in this situation. I think the Rams would be good for him due to the fact that you're playing indoors. LA will not be a problem for Shedeur Sanders. Okay. On top of that, you have Sean McVay, one of the better offensive minds in the National Football League. Sean McVay has also shown in a very quick period of time that he can be a very good quarterback coach as well as a head coach. Matthew Stafford aside, okay, Matthew Stafford was already a good quarterback before he went to the Rams, and of course, he got under the tutelage of Sean McVay, and the rest is history. We saw what Jared Goff turned out to be. Remember, Jared Goff once upon a time was a first overall pick of the Rams, was looking like a bust under former head coach Jeff Fisher. Sean McVay got a hold of him, and the rest is history. And then, of course, Baker Mayfield. You think how didn't work out for Baker when he started off as the first overall pick by the Browns, went to the Panthers, went to the Rams, really found himself. And since playing that brief time with the Rams and McVay, he went to Tampa and he has found himself a home in the National Football League. Shedeur Sanders, is coming into the league with some quality NFL coaching at his disposal. His offensive coordinator last year at Colorado was Pat Shermer, and that's a former New York Giants head coach. And that's a credit to his dad, Dion, because Deion Sanders, since being in Colorado, has brought in a lot of pro coaches and a lot of former pro players as position coaches, to help show youngsters what it takes to get to the next level. And having a coach like Pat Shermer, who's been there and done it for so many years in the NFL, to me, definitely contributes to Shedeur Sanders going forward. But nonetheless, getting back to the Rams, I think that would be a good spot for him. On top of that, he wouldn't have to start right away. So you have a situation, you have Matthew Stafford, of course. The Rams flirted with trading Stafford this past off season, and it didn't work out to that effect. They brought him back, they gave him some new money, but he's still 37 years of age, and who's to say, hey, you know what? It's still Stafford's job here in 2025. And the Rams, to me, are one of those teams, if you will. They could afford to redshirt Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback here in 2005 or 2025, excuse me. Also, the New Orleans Saints, I think they could be a good possibility uh, for Sanders as well. Basically, he would be switching team names, of course, but it's the same color scheme that he had in Colorado. You're playing indoors. I think the fan base in New Orleans would immediately gravitate to Shedeur Sanders because he would give them the best hope at the quarterback position since Drew Brees. Maybe not the best talent, but the best hope, okay, and a possible building block going forward. You have yourself a new head coach coming in Kellen Moore. And of course, Kellen Moore enters New Orleans hot. I mean, this guy, on that same field called the offensive game of offensive games as the Philadelphia Eagles just dominated the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl a couple of months ago. And of course, Kellen Moore was once upon a time, a couple of years ago, the offensive coordinator who was let go by the Dallas Cowboys, went to the Chargers, and then, of course, it all worked out for him in Philadelphia. Nonetheless, Kellen Moore is a former quarterback in the NFL. He's coming into New Orleans. He's looking to establish his system. Derek Carr is not the future in New Orleans. And typically, when you get yourself a new head coach, he wants to come in and get his quarterback right away. This could be a blessing in disguise if you are the New Orleans Saints and Shedeur Sanders is sitting there for you at number 9. And then finally, I throw the New York Giants into the equation. Like I said, I highly doubt that the Giants are going to take Sanders third overall. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the NFL draft, you never know what to expect until it ultimately happens. With that said, we've seen the Giants attempt to upgrade their quarterback room this offseason. They signed Jameis Winston, they signed Russell Wilson, but guess what? Neither one of those guys is the future of that franchise. Both of those guys, more than likely will not be on the Giants roster come 2026, as co-owner John Mara has basically put out the edict that we meaning the Giants, have to go out there and find our franchise quarterback going forward. Now, you already have Malik Neighbors at wide receiver. You need him. You need somebody to give him to be able to throw him the football long term. You have an offensive coach in Brian Daboll, a guy who came to the Giants with a reputation as far as working with quarterbacks, and of course, he inherited Daniel Jones, and of course, it didn't work out. Um, again, like I said before, I would highly doubt the Giants take Sanders third overall. I think the best case scenario, if just throwing it out there, if Sanders were to end up with the Giants, I think they use their third overall pick, and I think they possibly trade back in to round number 1 if the New Orleans Saints pass on Shedeur Sanders. And that's a big if right there. I think at that point, if they really wanted him, okay, I think it would be a mad scramble to try to get ahead of Pittsburgh if the Steelers decided to take it at 21. Like I said, there are so many different scenarios that could happen come Thursday night because it's one of those where more than likely Sanders is not going to go in the top three to either Cleveland or the Giants. Okay. Would somebody try to jump ahead of New Orleans at number 9? You never know. Would somebody try to jump ahead of Pittsburgh at number 21? Would Pittsburgh want to move up? Would the Rams want to move up? Okay, like I'm saying, these are teams that I think could possibly be in play for Shedeur Sanders, and I think a lot of it factors in if maybe a Jackson Dart, if people are high enough on him to go top 20 and he is taken off the board and Sanders is still there, then would a team be willing to draft or move up to draft him? We got to wait and see. But nonetheless, there is still a lot, that has to be figured out. And again, like I said before, it will not be fully figured out until Thursday night and the draft. For me, I always say this, when it comes to a player, what type of pro potential, what type of pro future does he have? I think it comes down to the team. Think it comes down to the organization. I think it comes down to the coaching and the personnel that you put around somebody. I think Sanders has the potential to be a quality NFL quarterback if he's put in the right situation because so often we see players, not just quarterbacks, but players who come into the NFL with immense talent, but they're put into the wrong situation. If the soil is bad, the tree is not going to grow. Okay. I do think there's potential there, but you got to coach him up. I think you got to put the right people around him, and I think you can go forward. Like I said, that is why I'm putting the Rams at the top of that list as far as the best pro potential for a Shedeur Sanders. But nonetheless, I think this young man, he's gonna hear his name called on Thursday night. He's not shy from confidence. Okay, and of course, you know he's the son of Deion Sanders, and Deion Sanders was never, and he still isn't shy from confidence. It's one of those where I think he still has to get better as far as reading defenses, in my opinion. But again, he needs better offensive line play in front of him. Did not have that at Colorado, and then it's all going to be about that coaching. I think whoever drafts him should not try to go out there and rush him out there right away. Okay, and that's again why I think the Rams would be the best scenario for him because you got a Matthew Stafford, and even if you wanted to throw the Giants into that situation, if they were to draft him at some point, you don't have to rush him out there because you got a Russell Wilson right now. So let's see what happens. A lot of different scenarios for Shador Sanders, but hopefully for his sake, um, it's a situation where he goes to not he's going to get drafted, but he just simply goes to the best situation possible, the best team, the best organization that will give him the opportunity to success to succeed. Excuse me there for one moment, but nonetheless, until Thursday night, we're just playing the waiting game, and let's see where Sanders will wind up. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And if you like what you heard and saw in this podcast, please feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. That goes for Instagram as well. You can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. And like I said, for the X, you follow me, I'll follow you right back. Also, if you're on Facebook, you can check us out at the Sports Depot 365. As far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. And for all of you NFL fans out there, I will be going live during the NFL draft. You can check me out both on Instagram and YouTube at separate times come Thursday night for round one of the draft. You can also check me out on Twitter. You can also check me out on Instagram and YouTube throughout the weekend, giving my takes on the 2025 NFL draft. But nonetheless, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.